guys, welcome back to Primer Podcast. My name's Jessica Flake. I'm part of the spiritual formation team here this week with Jarm Turner, part of our pastor team here on staff. So we're really kind of right in the middle of Jonah, where he's really just kind of gotten put on the coast of Nineveh. He's been in the whale for a few days, and now he's right on the coast, right where he's supposed to be in the first place. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how Jonah's gotten here so far?
Yeah. I think a lot of folks, when they think about Jonah, they think of Jonah and the whale, and they feel like the whale is kind of like the central kind of part of the story, and like Pete has been kind of walking with us through, is that, and really actually we're just now getting into the real meat of the story and what's happening here. In fact, I kind of think of this moment. I just kind of imagine Jonah like just laid out on the sand, covered in whale gastric juices and
right. Yeah, it says vomited.
Yeah,
I wasn't gonna say that, but
yeah, it's kind of gross. Yeah, in fact, a lot of commentators and preachers, they kind of imagine that he might have been bleached white and have like lost all of his hair, which would have made him extra scary as an evangelist going into town.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna project it that much, but it's I can imagine the scene of what that must have been like to have been thrown up on the sand. So it's like right here in chapter 3, verse 1, that I feel like you remember being a kid, being on a seesaw, right? When was the last time you were on a seesaw?
It's been a while. Yeah. I think when
too.
my kids are little.
Yeah. But that little center part of the seesaw, that's there for a reason, that fulcrum, and you can begin to feel the shift from one person to another as it kind of goes back and forth. And I feel like 3:1, it really is, you kind of sense the whole story, the entire narrative of Jonah kind of shifting another direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so let's start off with 3:1. This actually kind of gives us the reason why.
So I'll read, yeah. So then the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. Go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim to it the message I gave you.
So what stands out to you about that first verse? Anything?
Well, the second time.
Yeah.
Right. So the thought of, truthfully, it made me think that there was nothing different than that. What God wasn't saying anything different. He wasn't expecting Jonah to do anything different, even though Jonah went in a different direction to begin with.
Yeah, second time, and I think those 3 words. I mean, those are very, very powerful words. I feel like for the rest of what's happening here. It's almost like a deja vu moment. I'm sure you've probably had those before. Kind of experience a little bit of deja vu.
That odd, yeah.
Yeah, so when you read 3:1, you're like, I feel like we've been here before. Well, we have. Go back to Jonah 1:1.
Right.
And God instructs Jonah, arise, go to Nineveh. And here we are after this whole ordeal. So much has happened. I mean, so much drama and action and craziness.
Right.
And here he is laying on the beach, and God just gently just says the same thing.
Yeah.
Arise, go to Nineveh. I kind of think like, what else? What could have God said? Like if you were in that moment, giving instructions to somebody and they disobeyed you, like what would?
Well, as a parent, I have said, well, you missed your opportunity.
Yeah.
Oh well, you don't get to do this.
Yeah, you got to learn your lesson.
Yeah.
Go to your room. You know, or I'll just get your sister to do it.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that like God could have said, you know what, I've got a more competent prophet that I have in mind. I think he'll do a better job than you. So, I saved you. Go on back home and sleep it off, and we'll send somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't do that.
Right. Yeah. It struck me to the thought of God's will never changes. And he had a plan for Jonah the entire time, even though Jonah went in a different direction. And how often we can do that. We go in a different direction than what God's plan is for us. But yet, as soon as Jonah remembered God, he points him back to the place where he's supposed to go.
Yeah.
And truthfully, it's comforting to me as a follower.
Yeah. Second chance is important. I know you've felt that the need for a second chance before. I know I have many times.
Right.
3rd, 4th, 5th chances. And and a lot of times there are some things that can kind of hold us back from taking advantage of those second chances. Because just because God gives us a second chance doesn't mean we embrace them. There's some things that hold on. And in the message, there are two kind of traps that we fall into that I mentioned about second chances. One is the kind of the fatal failure trap, to where I feel like I've messed up, so bad that I cannot take advantage of the second chance, or I don't know if I'll even get a second chance.
Yeah.
And Jonah, even though God gave him, obviously, hey, rise, go to Nineveh, he could have said, you know what, I messed up too bad. I'll never be able to do this, or I failed too, horribly. I'm just horribly wrong, and I won't be able to make it. So it's the fatal failure, kind of trap. And the other one is kind of the end of the road kind of trap, or like a finish line, where I feel like, you know what, I've that season of my life is behind me, and I don't know if there's anything else ahead for me. A lot of folks feel that way when they get kind of in their older years in life. You kind of begin to mourn what's behind you, and then kind of the way forward lacks clarity, and you get into the trap of thinking like, I don't know if God has anything else special for me out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see, like, I know in my past I have felt like I've messed up so much that God would never forgive me, and to think that God still uses Jonah after he deliberately went in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, whether it's deliberate, I mean, there's been things that I've deliberately done in my past before I was truly a follower, but even now, like not realizing sometimes how undeliberately we do things, and but yet as soon as we remember, God redirects us.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and read on, because it's not just, of course, Jonah and about his second chance, but really also chapter 3 is really about an entire city of people.
Yeah.
So this is much bigger than just one life. It's about thousands and thousands of people, the people of Nineveh, and in God's heart for them. So go ahead and let's keep reading.
Jonah obeyed the word of the Lord and went to Nineveh. Now Nineveh was a very large city. It took 3 days to go through it. Jonah began by going a day's journey into the city, proclaiming, 40 more days and Nineveh will be overthrown. The Ninevites believed God. A fast was proclaimed, and all of them, from the greatest to the least, put on sackcloth. You want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. When Jonah's warning reached the king of Nineveh, he rose from his throne, took off his royal robes, covered himself with sackcloth, and sat down in the dust. This is the proclamation he issued in Nineveh. By the decree of the king and his nobles, do not let people or animals, herds or flocks, taste anything. Do not let them eat or drink, but let people and animals be covered with sackcloth. Let everyone call urgently on the Lord. Let them give up their evil ways and their violence. Who knows? God may yet relent and with compassion turn with his fierce anger, so that we will not perish.
Yeah, that's good. Let's go back to Jonah's sermon, because I mean, this whole thing is about, the whole call was to, hey, I want you to go deliver a message.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think to yourself, okay, this is going to be whatever the message is. Like, I'm ready to hear it now. I mean, all of this trouble to deliver a message.
Yeah.
And then check out just strike you how long the message was.
Right. It's very short.
8 English words.
Yeah. 40 more days and Nineveh will be overthrown.
That's it. Now, we don't know maybe he elaborated a little bit more and they just recorded those few lines. But in essence, the message is five Hebrew words, 8 English words. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't sound hopeful.
No, yeah, there's nothing for the Ninevites to do. Like, Jonah didn't say, "Oh, but you can do this."
Yeah, he didn't give an altar call or say, "Hey, if you guys do this or that." Yeah, he didn't give him any kind of any action step. And we'll come to find out in chapter 4, that Jonah really is still very reluctant to do this. I mean, his heart is not in it, which again speaks to God using imperfect people, even with our bad attitudes. But what's important to him is, or people turning their hearts towards Him.
Yeah.
But I want you to take another look at the message though in those few words. 40 more days and Nineveh will be overthrown. Do you see any hope in there at all?
To me, the 40 days, it gives them time.
Yeah.
Um,
Seems like to me like if God was going to overthrow Nineveh, He was intent on doing it.
right.
He was like, yeah, this is going to happen. Just take them by surprise. But the fact that He sent a prophet and part of the message was 40 more days, there's kind of a window of time that's given. And that I feel like that's important. For us is to know kind of just to understand and embrace the long suffering and the patience that God has with us.
Yeah.
In the windows of time and opportunity He gives us to turn our hearts towards Him. You any thoughts on that?
Well, to be honest, back to Jonah's feeling of Nineveh, it doesn't seem like Jonah had a whole lot of compassion for Nineveh. And so like the thought of him just saying, 40 more days, you guys are going down.
Yeah.
And no even talk about God. There's no mention about God. Mm-mm. And so it's odd to me that to be honest, like reading on through this, they quickly turned to God. Mm-hmm. The Ninevites quickly turned to God, but really had nothing to do with what Jonah said, except that they knew something was coming, and I'm guessing that they knew who Jonah was, and that he believed in his God, and so it's the thought of those few words that didn't say, hey, you have 40 days to turn back and from your wickedness. It immediately made them think differently about their lives and how quickly they turned away from their wickedness. Mm-hmm. And I mean, even the king, and plus like the thought of, and we've talked about this, how often we look at the well being the miracle, and how this is such a miracle that it says everyone in Nineveh has turned, even the animals.
Yeah, like that. I would give you the challenge of trying to find anywhere else in the Bible where an entire city like this of, I think upwards to well over 100,000 people all repent and turn towards God, which that is a miracle. That is huge, based upon such a short message.
Yeah.
The other part in that message, though, that is important to note is that word overthrown, which in the Hebrew it actually is kind of it could go both ways. It could either mean being destroyed and demolished. It was actually used in reference to Sodom and Gomorrah, that it was overthrown, it was destroyed and demolished. But it could also mean changed. That it can I think it was in Nehemiah where it uses that word to talk about changing a blessing, a curse into a blessing. So it's used in both positive and negative. So they may have heard that and thought to themselves, well, maybe,
Right.
In fact, I did highlight the words from the king. I love those words. In addition to a second time, I like the words "who knows." Mm-hmm. God may. So who knows? Put that on a t-shirt. Who knows? God may. Mm-hmm. I like that sense of possibility and hopefulness. That what. We messed up. We've been extremely violent people. We've done some horrible things. So they have.
Yeah.
I mean, these people were bloodthirsty people. Which is why, probably Jonah had every kind of, at least in my perspective, every right to really despise them.
Right.
Because of what they've done to his own people. Mm-hmm. But here the king is recognizing their own violence. In fact, he even says that, and he says, "You know what? We really deserve this." But who knows? God may. Mm-hmm. And then he actually calls on. I think he calls on God's compassion. Yeah. God may relent and with compassion turn from his fierce anger so that we will not perish. Mm-hmm. So there's something there where he recognizes that Jonah's God is a God unlike the gods they serve, the pagan gods of compassion. His is a God of compassion. Mm-hmm. He may be a God of compassion. So obviously the Spirit of God was at work in that city. Also notice that the repentance didn't come from the top down, even though the king made a decree. Right. When did the king make the decree?
after he heard. So yeah, it was. Um, the Ninevites believed, and a fast was already proclaimed, and so it was. To me, I would think that some of the people of Nineveh had already started changing their hearts, and then the king had a change of heart, and he made the decree.
Yeah. So it's kind of grassroots.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Well, I love that. That last verse, when God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he relented and did not bring on the destruction that he had threatened.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that right there is I feel like, kind of the pinnacle. This is what God wanted the whole time.
Yeah.
He wanted people to turn to him, starting with Jonah, but for the sake of an entire city.
Right. So. Yeah. Well, I'm excited to dig deeper into the discussion questions, and hopefully you guys will enjoy diving deep into your group with these questions, or as an individual study at home. We will see you next week.